Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. And today we are going to be recapping and comparing Off Campus Season 1, Episodes 3 and 4 to the book. Let's go. Hey friends, so welcome back to my channel. I am so excited to be going over episodes 3 and 4 with you guys, and I'm going to continue to do this. There was maybe a bit of like mixed reception for the first 2 episodes that I shared, and I love that. I love the discussion. I love chatting about it. And in all honesty, like, I have lots of thoughts on all of this stuff too. I think, well, of course I do. I'm making the videos. I understand. I just think that it's always so interesting to remember that no matter how passionately you love something or dislike something, there's always someone out there who feels the exact opposite as you, or a combination of your feelings. So just to remind everyone again to be really respectful in the comments. This is something I know people get tired of hearing. And if you get tired of hearing it, it's because you are already being the respectful person and you don't want to get chastised. And I'm not chastising you if you're doing the right things. And if you're the other person who's tired of hearing it, but you're still doing it, well, maybe you are the asshole. Just want to put that out there. Because with any of the shows that I, am breaking down, even if I don't fully love them, I still have great respect for the people who do and are enjoying it. And I love having a healthy debate and getting into it. But let's just be kind, because these take a lot of work to put together. Like, it may seem simple, but I don't have the best of memory these days. So I rewatched these 2 episodes like twice. Then as soon as I have notes done, like, Instagram starts sending me videos and I realize I miss a whole bunch of things, but I don't want to change how I do it to try to copy what other people have picked up on and things. So you're more than welcome to, in the comments, point out things you're noticing, but also please remember, I'm only recapping 3 and 4 in this one, and I'm really trying to not go beyond those bounds. And I did have some people basically spoiling the entire series with the comments they don't like. We will get there. Like, I'm going to do all the episodes and we can talk about it. But I'm gonna have to like hide your comments or delete them if you're just spoiling the whole thing. Because I don't care that this all dropped at once. I don't care that the book's been out there for 10 years. I don't care about those things. The way that I do it, I try to keep it to what we're covering it, in case there are people who are watching the episodes and then coming to my recaps. I know that might seem unbelievable to some of you guys, but I have people tell me all the time that they do. And because the way that I've always recapped stuff is only going up to the point where we're at, please don't do that. It's also why I label the sections of my video, so that the people who don't care about the recap can just jump to the comparison part of it. Or if there's the people who want to talk the spoiler parts, I will eventually have a spoiler section in these videos. I think starting with the next video, which will be episodes 5 and 6, because up to this one, I think we're still within stuff that's within the deal, but very soon, we're going to be stretching beyond that. So those are just the rules about how I do it here. All right. There's a million other videos out there, maybe not a million, but hundreds of other videos at this point of people doing it that way. And you're more than welcome to go there. But I've always kept it that way on my channel. And that's why I plan to continue doing it, because that's what I like. And it's my channel. So anyway, I hate being bossy mama at the beginning, but that's what I'm going to do, because I'm going to keep it real with y'all. So as we did with the last time, I'm going to do recaps of episodes 3 and 4. I'll go through them pretty steadily and as quickly as I can, with my commentary being mostly confined to how I felt about those scenes, if I like them or I didn't, which, spoiler, I'm still pretty much loving everything I'm seeing right now. And then I will get to a section that is comparison. And again, I'm only really making comparisons with where these parts of the episode are in the book, right? Which with this one, it was a little bit harder because things do start to get switched around. So we'll definitely be talking about that in the comparison part, because they do some things in different order. There's different feelings that the actors are portraying than what's happening in the book. There are definitely different actors being used for scenes than what they are in the book to give screen time to certain people. So this will really be the episode where I start to nitpick that. But again, I had some people already talking about changes for the entire season and future books. Just hold it. Just hold it. Or if you really are going to do it, please do spoiler for the whole season and like leave some spaces, because I'm sorry, we're just not doing that yet. Okay, my friends, we're just not doing that yet. So don't do that. Okay. All right. Let's get into the recap of season of episode 3. Okay, so we start off episode 3, the orgasm, with a sex dream sequence. Now, I think maybe most of us knew this was a sex dream as soon as the clothes started coming off, because that just doesn't quite seem like our Hannah. And there's also the point in the scene where I think I even wrote it, like when Justin does go to take his shirt off is maybe when the buzzing first starts. Maybe it's a little bit after that. Maybe it's when she starts and he's like, you can do it, is maybe when we hear the buzzing start. I don't know. Maybe that's when she needed her teammate to tap in. But Hannah's having a sexy dream about Justin. They're like writing a song together, and it morphs into a sexy time with them, and she isn't able to finish with her vibrator. Then we have the next scene, and we have Garrett answering a call from Hannah, and she is sitting in her room and he is at the frat, and they are planning to meet up today. And she has to push the meeting back with him because she is supposed to be meeting for a songwriting session with Justin. So we find out that between the end of season, I keep wanting to say season, I'm so sorry. Between the end of episode 2 and 3, she supposedly did ask Justin for help writing the song, and he's agreed. And so she says, you were right. And we have Garrett saying, I know my pretentious douches. I can't even say the word. So bravo to Belmont for being able to say that line as Garrett, because I couldn't even get it out there. But she's so nervous to meet up with him. Garrett does seem a bit disappointed that she has pushed back their tutoring session. We'll see how he reacts with that shortly. But we see Hannah really excited, and I did clock this right away. I wrote it down in my original note apps that she has a playlist open on her desk that says Crushing with a picture of Justin. Now, we don't know all the songs that are on it, but I definitely clocked it. And of course, later in the episode, we'll see that. Of course, that was intentional. I love when filmmakers are so intentional, which of course they had to be because they made that playlist. But there are a few things within the show that are Easter eggs that don't get addressed. And I will be pointing out a few of those as we go that I've been hearing from other people. And there were some that I missed in previous 2 episodes to talk about because, again, I was jumping on making that episode really quickly. And I maybe should have waited a little bit longer before I did, but whatever. We're on the ride. I wanted to get it out to you guys. So he does say one really cute line beforehand. He tells her to just remember that Justin might not know it, but you're the real catch. Act like it. And she says, thanks, coach. And so she closes her laptop and heads out. So then we have scene 3, which is Garrett, I guess, coming down, and he's supposed to be studying, but we're at the frat house, and there's lots of other guys there coming in and out, and there's actually these 2 named Lexi and Zoe. We learn their names because Dean introduces them, and they're playing air hockey with him. Jules is there. Garrett says he needs to study, and Dean says, and I need to live. This is the living room. I love that. And we get our first intro to Liquid IV with this one, which it must be I think it's the next episode, so I'll save it. But Liquid IV got in on the sponsorship early, and I love it. And I love it in this way that, again, I'm going to make some of these comparisons because they're funny. It's not about how the filmmakers did anything. It's stuff with that. But you know how we all joke that Canada Dry and like Grillo's Pickles really missed out on sponsorships with Heated Rivalry. Well, Liquid IV did not miss. They were like, you know, this is going to be a sports show and they're going to need things to be drinking. And what's better than Liquid IV? So Liquid IV is going to basically make a moment in every episode throughout. And you know what? I don't even care because it's great. It's hilarious. And I have Liquid IV in my house. And I, in fact, actually was a, influencer for Liquid IV for a very brief amount of time. I don't know why they ever sent me stuff because whatever, but I loved it. And I actually still have the like bottle that they sent me for. I love it. It's one of my favorites. So mad respect for Liquid IV, whether you like to use hydration acceleration stuff or not, whatever, I still think it was cute. So we get the first mention of that, but it comes actually with a little bit of sauciness to it, because they had sent Garrett a bunch of stuff and Garrett had said no because he doesn't have time for brand deals is what he's saying. He doesn't have time for that. And he also doesn't need the money. But Garrett's dad is the one who sent it over. And so they're kind of all busting his balls about it. And Jules makes the comment. She's like, he knows he's a Nepo. You guys should do the ad together. That would be great. And Logan is like, I don't need the charity. And Jules is like, yeah, you do. And it'd be so fun. What's better than to, well, we'll get back to that. Someone else says that. But there's actually the idea that like you should do it with him. And Garrett is like, no, I'm not going to do it. But that's going to come back around. So let's remember that. We'll be back. But anyway, everyone's busting his balls. So we have the actual songwriting meetup where we have Justin playing some of her stuff. It's kind of flirty back and forth. She says that it's supposed to be a love song about like longing, and Justin is trying to get her to share about herself. And every time he asks a question, Hannah just kind of shies away from it. So you can see him, he's being very kind. There is maybe like a bit of flirt happening with it. But mostly he's trying to get something out of her and she's really not sharing with him much, right? She's staying very closed off, which that's not how you do music, right? Or this kind of music. All right, then we have our next scene, and I'll be honest, I breezed by this one a little bit on the rewatch because I just didn't really care about it, but it's Allie and Sean in the shower, and the most important stuff to get out of this scene, what I wrote from it, is that Allie has an agent, and Sean is kind of like, yeah, but aren't you just going to move with me to, I don't remember where they're going to be moving to, but aren't you just going to move with me and we'll start our lives together? I thought you would move on from this acting thing. And Allie is like, what are you talking about? Like, this is literally, like, she's a theater major. This is everything she wants. And so Sean has all these domestic plans for them, and Allie wants to live her dreams. And we just have Sean, I mean, again, it's so tough because, like, he's being condescending and really kind of crushing, but he also just seems like a practical, kind guy at the same time. They're just not meant for each other. That's really what I get. And I'm putting this up there now. I appreciate that no one in the show is really made out to be complete assholes in any direction, by the way, besides Garrett's dad. Okay, we know how we feel about him. And the guy who, you know, assaulted Hannah. Nobody else is seen as a complete asshole throughout this series. And I love that, actually. Like, really, I do. Because these are still very young people. And even when they're saying things like this, they don't know shit about life, really, outside of this. Even the ones who went through hard stuff. The hardest thing you've lived through is the hardest thing you've lived through. I don't know. Just as a 33-year-old watching college students, I'm very aware of this. I, of course, think that things Garrett and Hannah and Logan, and I mean, Allie's lost her mom. Like, pretty much everybody has lost a parent, at least one, in this freaking series, you know? Because that gives people trauma and damage to work through. So, yeah. But it doesn't go well. All right, then we have the next scene. And we have Hannah arriving at the frat after songwriting. Logan actually meets her by the steps. He carries her bike up the steps. They have this cute moment where he actually admits that he had worked on her car before. And he says that he's actually still fixing things. So if there's anything she needs worked on, that's what he's doing as like part-time work. He's adorable. He knows who she was. But I will say, he doesn't really warn her about what she's walking into either, which I wouldn't say is him being bad, and maybe he didn't know while he was outside that things inside escalated the way that they did, but I do think it's a bit of a jerky thing to do, and we'll get to it later. I do believe this is a bit of a change from the book, like the interactions there and everything, but point is, we know Logan is kind of crushing on Hannah and doesn't really get what she sees in Garrett. But we get in there and she heads upstairs and she hears cherry pie coming from Garrett's room. And when she opens the door, he is going down on a girl. And I think this one is Zoe, is who he's going down on. And literally full, like, has a mouth wipe situation that he needs to do. And she is like, seriously, bro. And she storms out. So scene 7, or next scene, is Hannah leaving in a huff, grabbing her bike and heading down. And they stop in the middle of the street for this conversation, which is just really inconsiderate of everyone else around them. We could have been on the sidewalk here. But Garrett is still shirtless. He's in sweatpants and slides. And if there isn't a more hockey bro, I mean, just athletic bro vibe than his. This is also the scene that I'll point it out now where getting a bare-chested Garrett, a lot of people have been pointing it out. So the actor who plays Belmont actually donated a kidney, I believe, like 5 or so years ago. And you can very prominently see his scar from that there. So people are going crazy over him. But just a side note to share in case you'd like to zoom in next time and want to know. But Garrett was studying with Zoe. He says he really was studying, and she was just helping him get more motivation. And she says, you aren't taking our deal very seriously. He says, sorry, but she postponed. And she's like, yeah, to now. I told you when it was. And he says sorry. He starts to have a discussion about their class again in the middle of the street. So he asks about, like, how do you decide truth for yourself? Like, he starts getting into philosophical question. And then he's like, why don't you come back upstairs and we'll study? And she's like, you literally have a naked girl in your room right now. And he's like, give me a couple minutes. But just as she maybe even looks like she's thinking about it, like she's going to give him a chance, she gets a text from Justin. And he's already sent her some lyrics. So she's like, okay, well, I want to go work on this. She says she'll send him a video on it instead, and she will meet with him before class the next day. So then we go to scene 8, the next scene that I have here. And Justin is playing for her. It's the Yellow Haze version. She says she likes it a lot. We discover that he does record himself while he is playing and everything. And he has a very, like, cerebral moment talking about all the things he records. I will say, I'm marking this now, I thought for sure him recording stuff was going to come back up again. And maybe I'll mention it. I don't know. I'll just mention it now because it literally doesn't become a thing. But because of how things are changed from the book, I was expecting Justin to maybe be a bit more of a villainous character at some point, right? Not like full on villain, but just that he would make a decision that, like, hurts Hannah more. Again, I know we get stuff later on, but in the general thing of it, like, Justin doesn't get, like, the cut direct, and he doesn't do anything super douchey at all in this show, which again is fine that they don't make him a bad guy or anything. But I just thought it was interesting that he records everything, because I was sure that was going to come back somehow later on, and, like, that he was going to record something that we could use. Like, I don't know. I was expecting more than that from there. But anyway, so then she sits down beside him and with her computer, and he sees her playlist of him there. And then he makes an excuse to leave, and he gets out of there. And she basically has a crash out, which I completely understand, because how mortifying was that he saw her playlist called Crushin' with his face on it. So definitely a bit intense. Next scene is, though, she has a bit of a replay of the situation in her head. She tries to pleasure herself again, and she has a bit of a fantasy sequence about him. Only this time, and I will tell you again, this is what a good, like, editing and like the playing out of a scene can be, because it's super hot where like Justin is going down on her. She's trying to get into it. We know, again, this is a fantasy, but Justin's head goes down, and then when a head comes back up, you can see Garrett's tattoo across the back. So we know these changed. But because they both have curly black hair, you actually for a second might not notice. I mean, I noticed because I knew our girl was going to start imagining Garrett. But it's such a great scene because it's like Justin's head goes out of frame. And when a head comes back in frame, we can see Garrett's tattoo across the shoulders. And he says to her, "What do you want, Wellesley?" And it is super hot. And then that morphs into the next scene the next day when he is saying, how am I doing, Wellesley? And they are before class and they're discussing it. So then she tries to turn their like homework into a bit of a hockey metaphor, trying to get him to loosen up. He's really worried about getting a certain philosopher, which we know, of course, will be the one he ends up getting, but he's getting nervous about it. And he admits to her here, No. He'd admitted this in the previous episode about how she is someone who centers him. That's why I wrote this note here. And so she says, like, he can look at her and convince her. And he can just speak right to her instead. So then we have the next scene, which is in class. And of course he gets the philosopher Kierkegaard. I think I pronounced that rightly. I wrote it like phonetically on my page so I could say it, but I think it's Kierkegaard. And the topic is ghosting. Would this be a moral or immoral act according to Kierkegaard? So Garrett ends up stumbling around a bit, but then he looks at Hannah. He looks to Hannah. And he talks to her. And so I actually really like this though, because the way he ended up debating this is that Kierkegaard would say that it is immoral because it is harmful to both the victim and to the perpetrator of the ghosting. And it's an abdication of selfhood when you ghost someone and you don't treat them like a person. You're disregarding their humanity, which I was like, damn, if this is how we learn philosophy, I like it. So then we leave class and we have our next scene, and he got a B+. And Hannah said, "Congratulations on being a professional bullshitter." So he lifts her up, and we get one of the scenes we saw from an early picture of it where he's lifted her up in the air. And then Justin walks by and he waves. And now, instead of her wanting him to look at her, she just wants to curl up and die. And so she tells Garrett about the fangirl playlist that she had. And he's like, "Now, were these songs that reminded you of Justin or what?" And she's like, "No, they're his band songs and songs he did in high school and just all of these things." And so then he texts her to ask her how she's doing. And she's like, "Oh my God, what do I say?" And Garrett grabs her phone and he says, "Fangirl, start thinking like a fuckboy," and ghost his ass. Which is great because it's the topic we just discussed. And she's like, "What about that?" And he's like, "That was me being a professional bullshitter, as you said." So he says, "Do you still want him? Then you're going to listen to me because I haven't been wrong yet, have I?" And he says, "We're going to go to Malone's." And he's like, "Do you know what tonight is?" Or she says, "You know what tonight is at Malone's?" Because she doesn't have to work that night. Or is it Della's? I honestly have morphed it into Malone's in my head. So whatever it is, I think it is, whatever, we know, the bar. And then we have the scene or she says, "Yes, I'll go with." So then we have the scene at Allie and Hannah's. Allie gives Hannah her slut top, which is from her boobs to Hannah's, by the way. Allie says she might stay in, but she finally tells Hannah that she got an agent, and Hannah's like, oh my God, that's fucking amazing. And Allie's like, yeah, it is amazing. Sean wasn't that excited for me. So that's what it is. She's feeling a little like unsure about it, and she's like, you gotta go. Let's go. It's karaoke night. So we transition to the next scene, and we have Allie singing Take Me Baby or Leave Me. And she is really going for it. So then we have a little discussion between Garrett and Hannah, and he asks her if she wants a drink, and she says, no, I don't do it. And he's like, I know, but like, do you want to drink? I'm not pressuring you to, but do you want to? Because if you do, I will guard your drink with my life. I'll make sure Allie is good. He's like, she is a lot to handle as drunk. And he's like, I've got her. Trust me. I'm not going to drink, And he says, do you trust me? And she says, I do. And he says, okay, then I will guard your drink with my life. And she says, okay, well, I'll have a drink. And he says, what's your drink? And she's like, I literally don't know. Which would make sense, because if you think about it, for her, through it, we know that she will drink something, but she, because she doesn't drink out ever, if she had a drink when she was 15 and then things that happened with her, it would make sense why she hadn't had time to find a drink that she wanted. So then we have a scene of her trying all the different drinks, which is super hot. Because, man, the eye fucking going on here. I don't even say it. But she lands on the pina colada and says, I think we found your drink. And it's super cute. Then we have a scene of Allie crashing out in the bathroom, just absolutely spiraling about what's going on with Sean, and that like she loves him, but maybe she actually just loves being in love. And then all of a sudden a woman in another stall like answers her when she says like, my mama told me to love my body. And the woman's like, my mama did too. And so this lady comes out, and then Dean comes out after. And he says J-Lo, and she says Maverick. And there's a little bit of back and forth, and then she's like, who the hell hooks up in a bar in a bathroom anyway? And then the girl who was just hooking up with Dean, she's like, no offense to you, honey, you are fantastic. It's so cute. But she's trying to like, rib at Dean, but also not be rude to this lovely woman she was chatting with, which is funny. Then we switch scenes, and we have Tucker singing Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy, and perfect, no notes. I loved every second of it. But we also have this really adorable scene, which was really fun to see, because again, we have Logan come in, and we have Hannah very drunk at this point. She is. Garrett sitting with her, watching her drinks, being with her. And we can still tell that, like, Logan is into her, and we'll see that even more a bit in this episode, too, with the longing looks and all the things. But he still is just, like, really fun with all of them there, too. And she says, Logan, you fixed my car. And Garrett's like, you have a car? And she's like, no, but I had one. So we get to see that moment. And she's like, wait. I have a drink for you. And she orders him a like blue carousel with a bunch of blue, that she names it the Blue Baroo. And he's like, I'm so excited to drink it. It's so funny. Like the banter right there between everybody is so great. And Logan is just so adorable with her. Like really, even as like his friend's maybe girl, maybe not, like he is just so kind with Hannah. And I love that so much. But then we have Jules show up again, giving Garrett a liquid IV to put in a bottle of, or a drink or whatever. And there's jokes about it again. And he drinks it and he's like, hey, it's not half bad. And this is when Hannah says, you guys should do the ad together. So I misspoke earlier. Part of that does happen here because that's when Logan says, I don't need charity. And Jules says, yes, you do. And Hannah says, what's better than one hot hockey player or what's better than two hot hockey players? Because then Tucker comes up done with his song. And he says 3 hot hockey players, which was adorable. So there we go. Sorry, I did mess that up earlier. I didn't put all those notes there. But then, Hannah says they should do that together. And then now that Tucker's song is done, Jules says, Hannah, you're up. Hannah Wells is up. And he's like, I thought you weren't going to sing. And she says, I found the perfect song. And he gives her his drink. And the song that starts is Cherry Pie. So she sings Cherry Pie, the Hannah rendition, which does have a few different lines in it. One of them having to do with like hockey gets put into the song. And she adds another line in there too that I don't know. But I said the slut top was really working. Okay. In all the best ways. Okay. And there was someone in the comments about a clip of this scene of like the most unrealistic part of this is Allie's top fitting Hannah. And well, I'll say I understand your point. It's also very clear that that top on Hannah is doing a lot of work with the girls there. And, you know, back when you were that, like, it's probably a stretchy top. So the girls can do different things. But it's true. I do think those are maybe not the same persons. But she basically is serenading Garrett, singing the song, and just watching him be so enamored with her. Like, I know there actually is probably moments earlier in the show where he fell for her, but him watching Hannah be so like unconstrained and unafraid, and yeah, it's happening when she's a little drunk or a lot drunk, but watching her be that way, you can just see, at least in Belmont, the way that he's playing Garrett, he's so fucking into her, and it's so hot. Like how he's into her when she's just like keeps coming up to him and like touching his jacket a little bit. And then we also see Logan, who is falling for her even more too. Like the poor boy is down bad for his friend's girl, or who, you know, he thinks might be her girl, but it's also still pretty hot scene. So Jules is watching it though, and she's like, you are so down for her. Which is awkward for everybody, let's just say. But then when she's all done, she says, Garrett tells her, you did good, Wellesley. Which, don't we all want Garrett Graham to call us a good girl? And if you don't, you're lying. Okay? You're lying. If you say you don't, like, you're lying to me. Okay. To round out this episode, though, we have one of the funnest sequence of events. So first we have the awkward car ride home, which, like, it's raining and it's absolutely silent. And we all of a sudden, so it's Hannah in the front seat, Garrett's driving, right? He said he would be DD, he's looking out for them. But who did he also say he would look out for? Allie. And Allie pops her head up and says, I left my purse and wallet at Malone's, and Malone's is closed. So they aren't going to be able to get back in because she also had Hannah's keys and wallet in her purse. So they got to go to the frat to spend the night. So we have everyone arriving at the frat. Allie flops down on the couch. We see Garrett take a moment and put a blanket over Allie, which is really, really cute. And then Garrett is looking for Hannah, and he notices her jacket on the ground, and then one of her shoes, and then another shoe, and then her pants, and her top, and her bra. So he is smiling, but it's really cute. Like, it's just really cute. It's so cute. There's no other way to say it. It's adorable watching him look at her, like, look at all this and know, like, not quite know what he's going to open his door to, but knowing that it can't be anything. It's just cute mix of feelings, right? And sure enough, when he gets in there, she is in his jersey, sitting on his bed, and she found something to sleep in, and he's like, I see that. Like, oh my god, his face, you guys, is so oh my god, it's so great. And then she says, I'm a fuck bunny, or I'm a like, or a puck funny, I'm a fuck bunny. And he says, you're a drunk bunny. And she's like, definitely coming on to him real hard. And he's like, you have to go to sleep. You're really drunk. You're not going to remember any of this. And so he tucks her into bed, and she's wearing his jersey to bed, which is like, girl, I love it. The only thing I was thinking about this scene is that, Garrett, why didn't you have her wash her face and brush her teeth? You did great, like, friend looking out for you, but please have her brush her teeth and wash her face. Like, honestly, I was more worried about the face, because, like, you know what? Your mouth's going to taste kind of gross after drinking, no matter what, I feel like. But have her wash her face, for goodness sakes. So then we have her waking up, sleeping next to Garrett, but he actually kept all of his clothes on, which is, of course he did, because he's wonderful. And Wellesley wakes up and she has a text from Justin. And he basically saying his roommates are going to be gone, so if she wanted to come over and work on the song, tonight would be the night. And she definitely wants to do that, but she has one little thing she's a bit worried about first. So we have her bring Garrett some coffee, and we have him shake himself awake a little bit, and she is like, what's up, buddy? We had sex last night, or you wanted to have sex with me. And she's like, I know. And he's like, you remember everything? And she's like, yes, I do. And then she says, I want to make sure you're really awake, because I'm going to ask you something really serious. She asks him to give her an orgasm. And that's the last scene of episode 3. Very cinematic. And you can tell, again, why these were kind of built in 2-episode runs to me. And I will keep bringing this up. I think it could have been a really good choice to drop 2 episodes a week for a month. I think it could have been really great. I understand why everyone wanted to binge right away. I don't need to hear blah, 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 blah. This is my opinion. It's my channel. And that's how I feel about it. But I think in 2-episode pairings would have been a really good way to do it, actually. So yeah, we have her ask him that, and then it cuts right into the next. Now, I will say that I feel like Amazon knows how many times you've watched it, because the first time that I watched all these episodes, I got the warnings, which I'm going to bring up again in just a second. So I tell you, they gave a specific type of content warning and a resource page at the beginning. But when I rewatched it, I didn't get it for episode 4 again, which was fine. I already knew what was in it. I don't actually need those warnings, so it's okay. I pray to God I never do. But the first time, I feel like it was there and it stayed up for like a long time. So I feel like Amazon knows how many times you watch it and everything, because I didn't get it the second time. But there was a warning for the rain, which is for survivors of sexual assault of all kind. So I knew we were going to get into it really well. And also, before this episode, I had to write it down. This is when the Liquid IV ad for Ring Pop Cherry showed up. It wasn't the only time, but right before this episode, there was literally an ad with Ella and Belmont doing it for Liquid IV. Ring Pop Cherry or something like that, or Rocket Pop Cherry, whatever it was. And it made me laugh so hard, because again, this is the kind of cheesy marketing that companies need to get on, because you guys, you don't understand, right? People were buying, I'm saying it again, people were buying Canada Dry whether or not they had endorsed it. Why not make a deal when you can, right? I'm just saying. So it was a good idea. So we come right back in where we were, right from it. And he says, excuse me, you want me to give you a, and she's like, orgasm. Jeez, why is it so hard for guys to say orgasm? He's like, I don't have a problem saying orgasm, orgasm, orgasm. I can say it. I'm just confused. And he's like, are you still drunk? And this is when Hannah like literally like stands up, shakes herself off, and she's like, okay, we're going to do this. And this is when she says, I'm going to tell you something really heavy. And I need you to, you're going to want to dwell on it, but like, we're not going to dwell. It happened a long time ago. I'm okay. And all that stuff. So she starts prefacing it with all this stuff. And I'm sure Garrett's thinking like, the fuck is going on? And sure enough, she drops the information. She shares that she was raped. And he says, oh shit. And she's like, we're breezing. You're going to breeze past this with me. And I just wrote, I'm like, honey, there's just there's no way to breeze past that. But I get what she's asking from Garrett. And of course, Garrett says, okay, I got it. We're breezing. But she explains, of course, what happened, that she was roofied in high school and then she was raped. And she says, I promise that I'm not being flippant about it. I've went to counseling, I've had therapy, and I'm in a good place. It doesn't define me. And we learn that he's the only one who knows this. She's never told anyone else about it. I mean, besides her parents and everything. And she explains that, like, Justin is, like, she wants to go out with Justin. He wants to work on the song today, and we all know what that means. But I want to be ready, and I can't orgasm with a guy. That's all she says in the show. We will, of course, talk about this in our comparison part of it. But she's just like, I want to do it with someone where it doesn't mean something, which of course Garrett says kind of like, what? And she's like, no, I need with a friend, with someone that I can, you know, she doesn't say it, but I mean, we're thinking it's something that someone that she can feel comfortable with. And I mean, girl, I think we're all seeing the signs that you are not. Like, if you can't be comfortable with the person you're going to have sex with, maybe you shouldn't be having sex with them. But we're not ready to examine that just yet. Garrett says, I'll do it. Of course I'll do it. And she's like, what? Really? And he's like, you're my friend and you need me. And if that just doesn't sum up the best of friends out there, I don't know what does. But great, great scene. I love that. So he's like, right now? And she says, no, I have class. But tonight maybe? And he agrees that yes, I will. So we have plans for this episode. So then the next scene, we have the announcement that Tucker is trying to pledge to Sig Tau, which is the frat that Dean and Bo are in. And Bo is going to be like his I guess it must be his mentor, his, you know, the person looking out for him. And Bo gives Tucker a challenge that he has to keep a piece of fruit alive until they tell him not to. And they start with a little grape. This scene is adorable in so many reasons that I'm trying to keep inside because I don't want to break my own rule of, like, maybe we'll touch on it in the comparison part at the end. But for now, it's just adorable. But every time one fruit gets taken, it gets replaced with a slightly bigger fruit that he has to protect. And so really immediately, like, Dean grabs and eats the grape, and then it gets switched with a strawberry. And then he takes the strawberry and it gets switched with a kiwi. And then he's like, this is the part where you run, which is cute. So then we have scene 3, and Hannah is playing part of the song for the teacher. And we have this little scene back and forth that the teacher is like, what were your favorite pop songs when you were young? And they're not all about the arrangement or the details in it. They're about how it makes you feel. And he's like, I'm not feeling you in this song. And that's what's most important about it. And I love that she says she listens to Paramore in the car, which is cute. Okay, then we have scene 4, and Sean and Allie have a breakup. So we didn't see exactly what happened with Allie that night, but I bet we're going to find out later on what Allie was up to. Return later for that. But she breaks up with Sean, and he acts so flippant about it that he's kind of like, okay, whatever. And he's like, you break up with me all the time, and I'm just really getting sick of it. I know the cycles that you go through, and then you're going to be asking me to take you back. And this is another scene too, where, like, I admit, like, Allie, like, I understand her reasonings for it. We've been seeing that her and Sean, like, their dreams don't align. So I understand why she's like, we're going to break up. But at the same time, I also understand him if he's been jerked around by her so much here, and he thought that they have the same dreams, which maybe he hasn't really been asking the right questions if he thinks they have the right dreams, because I don't think anyone else thinks that but him. However, again, Sean isn't this, like, big evil guy, right? He's not this big bad. He is just trying to make it through college like everybody else. And he has been through this pattern with her forever. But she's like, no, we are breaking up. Okay, then we have the next scene, which is the weight room. And this is a lot. I have so many notes here. Because what happens here is first we have Garrett trying to bench press. And he has the weight he's struggling with. And so Dean actually comes up and spots him. And he's just acting a little bit weird. And so Dean is like, okay, what's up, man? And Garrett, he ends up asking Dean for some advice. Okay. So first he says, you've been with a lot of women. And Dean is like, okay. He tries to play it off and he's like, no, I'm serious. And so he tries to keep Hannah out of it. So he says, what if there's a girl who's not Hannah? And Dean is like, sure, a girl who's definitely not Hannah. And Dean just says so many amazing things in this scene. Like, it's so good. First, Dean kind of thinks that she's a virgin. And we kind of like go with that where Dean is like, is Hannah a virgin? And he's like, no, it's not Hannah. It's not Hannah. And he's like, okay. So he tells him there's just one really important thing that you must have, and that is trust. And he says she needs to be completely relaxed, and she's only going to be that way if she trusts you. Consent is the key. She can't consent if she doesn't feel safe. So find what it is that makes this girl who's definitely not Hannah feel safe. And then foreplay. Don't skip. Do 5 play, 6 play, whatever it is. And Garrett even says, like, I don't know if I'm the girl that she should trust. And Dean says, if she asked you, you are, which is fucking hot. And I love Dean. And then he goes too far and makes another joke. And he's like, great talk, till they walk away. But I love that. It's a scene people are quoting all over the place. And it's just done so well. Like, I absolutely love, honestly, admitting like how they changed up that scene a little bit, because it just covers so much that needs to be seen. So then we have the next scene where Hannah actually bumps into Justin in the hall, and he's like, you didn't answer my text, which of course was the text that Garrett kept her from answering. And he's like, are we going to make plans for tonight? And she's like, I want to. There's just one thing I got to handle first. And he's like, okay, cool. So she still has plans to meet up with Justin. And next scene we have, and it's our orgasm time. So this is all kind of like one long scene, but I did break it into 2 parts for me to break it down. So first we have the scene where like Hannah thinks we're going to be having regular sex here, like of the penetrative kind, right? And so she is dressed up to the nines. She is wearing a super sexy dress that belongs to Allie. She's in these high heels and she looks like a babe. I mean, she absolutely does. But taking the advice he got from Dean, when Garrett gets her up to his room, he's like, do you want to wear something more comfortable? Because you don't look that comfortable. And so yeah, he offers her a shirt and she's like, our nightgown's my thing now. Cute little joke. And she's like, are we going to do it? And he offers her his phone to pick a song to play, to set the mood. And she ends up picking this like silly song. And she's like, how is this one of your most listened to songs? And it's really cute. And then he says, yeah, this song is so sexy. It makes me want to do this little dance. And they start having a little dance party. And yeah, it gets her comfortable to just being absolutely ridiculous. And he's like, it's terrible. I love it. I love it, which is adorable. But then he gets close to her and they're dancing together. And now we have the music shift out of that song and into a more romantic one. And now we're starting to get down to business. There's kissing, there's lifting and putting on the bed, there's touching, but he can tell when she starts to leave the room and she's trying to force it. And so Garrett is like, we'll just stop. It's okay. And she's like, no. And she's really trying to like force him to stay with her a little bit. And he's just like, hey, like we can slow down. It's all right. And he's listening to her so well, because then she says, like, this is what always happens. It feels good. But then it's like I leave my body and I'm watching from across the room and I just can't get back into it. And he says, there's nothing wrong with you at all. And she says, what if I'm broken? And he says the line we love so much. He says, you're not broken, Wellesley. You just don't trust me. And she says the thing like, or no, he says, you don't trust me enough to let go, and that's okay. And she says, I do trust you. I would not be here if I didn't, which is also true. And he says, nothing is more vulnerable than sex. And if you're not there yet, that seems really normal. And I'm like, oh, so good. A little mix of Dean, but a little mix of himself in there, right? And we love it. So he then says, I had one other idea that we can try if you're up for it. And she's, basically like, yeah, whatever we got to do here. And he says, instead of me giving you an orgasm, you can give yourself one. And she's like, well, I do that all the time. And great little moment of humor for him to be like, do you? Well, then show me. And then he says, and I'll show you too. Now, I didn't write down a lot of the music beats in here unless they were singing a song, but I'd never even heard this song. But because the show like tells you the titles of the songs that pop up, there's a song that pops up that's called Back in My Body. And again, I didn't even know what this song was or what it was, but I love how music is used in this show. I mean, whenever a show or a movie uses music like this, it gives me goosebumps all over. But I really noticed it on this rewatch, right? Because I was really paying attention for these notes that I was taking. And after he says, like, you show me and I'll show you, it says Back in My Body plays, is what it says across the bottom of the screen. And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. So there's a song that's called Back in My Body. So yes, they undress. He ends up sitting in like his desk chair. I'm sorry, I'm going to laugh here. Because this is an awkward scene, but it is very romantic, even though it's so awkward. There's no way to not do this awkward when it's not actually porn. It's even awkward in porn, okay? Like, I'm just telling you though, there's no way to show like voyeurism, like mutual masturbation this way without it being awkward, because you can only show faces, right? They show some of his chest, sure. They show the whole like where his arm is at, but the fact that, I'm sorry, I just have to cringe with y'all for a second. Not only do they both come immediately fast, which I have notes on that. It's very accurate for Garrett coming this fast, okay? Like, it is. He comes super fast in the book during this scene too, okay? That is great. He's getting a view of fully naked Wellesley, okay? He's so into her. He's already really turned on from what they were doing before. So him coming really fast is fine. But her, who already feels awkward about this, touching herself for less than 30 seconds and exploding, I was kind of just like it was a lot to have her come that fast in that scene. And also him in the chair and watching the chair and his face. It was so like, I get why maybe they didn't want him to stand and be like looming over her, because again, interjecting here, like from what I read in the book, it doesn't say how far away he's standing from her or whatever, but he is like standing, because it's literally said that like when he comes, he has to like grab the desk because he's like gonna fall. So he is standing when he does this in the book. And having him be in the chair and have it making these like movements while he's it's just so hard to take it seriously, okay? So I understand it's a very cringe scene, but it is still powerful, right? Like, this is still a really beautiful moment, even if it's cheesy in the book. But I won't pretend it's not kind of cheesy in the book, okay? It is. But while she's starting to, like, he sees her eyes go, he says, stay with me, stay here with me. And then very quickly they come, and he flops down on the bed beside her and they fist bump. And all I could think about is like, I'm sure he has tissues on his desk, but I'm like, sir, can we go wash our hands? At least it was a fist bump or something, but I was like, can we go wash our hands? All right, next scene, and it's snack time. So she is wearing his sweater and they go down and have a snack because sure enough, Tucker keeps foods in there. And she, again, is laughing about his playlist. And he's like, I'm a cool hockey player who contains multitudes, which I thought was funny. But then he admits that another little piece of himself, which is actually that his mom loved that type of music. And so those songs really make him think of her. And then she says, she asks him the question that her professor told her to ask. Like, how do you feel when you hear it? And he says, bold, which I love that answer. And then he asks her to stay the night, and then his phone is pinging. How he hasn't learned to mute his fucking phone, I don't know, but he doesn't. And she is like, thank you for your service, and they go on their way. So now we have the next scene, and we have Allie and Hannah, and we have a girl check-in here. And we have Hannah admitting that she is really broken up with Sean and that she's not going to spiral with him. That's not going to happen. But she's wearing Sean's sweatshirt, and she's already ate the Cheetos, and she's like, distract me with something else. So she admits that Garrett gave her an orgasm, and she's like, oh, do you like him now instead of Justin? And Hannah's like, no. Garrett was just a means to an end. He's my friend. He was helping me. And she's like, you sure you're not dickmatized by Garrett? And she admits, like, he made me feel safe, but girls are always sexting him and he's still a playboy, but he's my friend, you know? So then we have scene 11, and we have a practice where the guys are, I actually love how they did this scene. There's so much hockey in this show. And even though I'm not a hockey girly myself fully, I'm a hockey book girly. And so I like the atmosphere gets kept by the story. And he's sitting and like talking to Dean and Tucker and Logan, and they come in and out. And it's actually Birdie, who is one of the other players, who tells him, you know, you like her. That's what's going on. Dude, you're into her. And Garrett is like, fuck, you're right. And so he has this moment of revelation sitting there, and he's like, you need to tell her. And he's like, should I tell her today? And Birdie's like, yeah, you should tell her today. And so it all gets decided that we're going to tell Hannah at Drunk Shakespeare that night. So we're getting ready to go to Drunk Shakespeare. But we have Logan kind of overhearing some stuff, being a little bit jealous. We will admit it. He's being a little bit jealous in his actions and everything. And also Tucker's fruit gets eaten by Dean. So then we have Jules and Logan after practice, and we get a bunch of backstory from Jules is what happens here. Jules explains that Logan's been passed over for the draft 2 times before, and he needs to stop getting distracted. And if he's going to chase a dream that matters, because Logan doesn't have the same privileges that Garrett does. So then we switch to scene 13, the next scene that I have written down, and it is before Drunk Shakespeare, and Allie is being raging diva Allie, and she calls Hannah cunt. So she's really wound up and is upset. But Justin ended up coming to Drunk Shakespeare, and he admits that he's there for Hannah and that they can sit together. And so we also see Garrett and Dean and like all the guys except I don't think Logan went because we maybe see him. Yeah. I don't think that he went because we see him later. But Dean, Tucker, Bo, and Garrett go. And it's going to be a fabulous time. Okay. So Hannah ends up sitting by Justin. So I guess this is their like kind of outside of songwriting style, like meet up together. But then we have Drunk Shakespeare, and I won't explain the entire thing to you. Just know that, as Dexter said, it's going to be messy. And the point of Drunk Shakespeare is that the actors are going to be acting out stuff. Sometimes there'll be audience participation, which we'll get to in a second. And if an actor forgets a line, everybody drinks. So just a way to get college kids drunk, I guess. And then Dexter asks for audience participation. They need 2 lovers and then like the father and another lover. I can't say all the names from this play. They're doing a Midsummer's Night Scream. I don't know enough about this one to keep it straight. But Justin and Hannah get picked to play lovers. Garrett is supposed to be, I don't know, the one that she's supposed to marry, but she's actually in love with Justin. And there's like, but daddy, I love him going on or whatever. And Garrett and Kendall get pulled in. So Garrett gets voluntold by Dean to play. And I love it because Dexter goes, come here, Pookie. It's so great. And then Kendall volunteers herself as well. And this is where we think for a hot minute that, that Kendall might get a bit bitchy. And she definitely wants to, because she's holding a bit of a grudge against Garrett, who has been telling her that he doesn't have time for a girlfriend. And at first Hannah's so positive though. She's like, oh my gosh, you're from the hockey game. And she's like, I know who you are, Hannah. Everyone knows who's locked down Garrett Graham. And we have this awkward scene up there where Justin's standing by Hannah and Kendall, and then there's Garrett, and Hannah's like, he's not on lock. He's free to unlock anyone that he wants to. And Dexter's like, oh, this is gonna be messy. It's that kind of scene. So Hannah is straight up telling people that her and Garrett are only fuck buddies, I guess, is what she's implying to that. But then we have the next scene, and Dexter takes Kendall and Garrett back to the back room where they're supposed to wait for their turn. And he's like, here, have some drinks if you want. We'll call you when you're ready. And Kendall is ready to get some stuff off her chest. And so she is like, you said you didn't have time for a girlfriend. And seeing you pine over her is just really hard to see. And he's like, I'm not that into her. He's just denying it, which we already know the reason he's here. Like, the whole fucking reason he's here is to tell Hannah he's into her. And he's going to try to bullshit Kendall. But Kendall says back, like, you're looking at her the way that I looked at you. And it really sucks when someone doesn't like you back. Or Garrett, I think, says that. He's like, I'm sorry. And Kendall doesn't want to believe it, but he's like, listen, if I'd known what this felt like, I would have handled it differently, because it really sucks when they don't like you back. And he's so earnest that Kendall looks at him and is like, fine, I accept your apology. And I love that about her too. Like I said, nobody is made out to be a heartless bitch in here. Her feelings are hurt. They are allowed to be hurt. When she thought he was into her, he keeps sleeping with her. He dumped her because he doesn't have time for it. And now he's sleeping with his tutor, just like, in the timeline of the show, this has only been not even 2 weeks, right? So it's fair that Kendall would be hurt. And she gets a tad bitchy with Hannah. She does. But she doesn't say anything unforgivable. And when Garrett asks her to forgive him, it literally is forgiven. And she even says, she's like, dang it, I really was looking forward to being a bitch. And I just love that. I truly, truly do. And it's a beautiful, like, thing that was done, because they're messy. They're all fucking around with people up until this point. And so it is allowed for her to be upset and think that he was leading her on, because he kind of was, because he liked having sex with Kendall, and while things were chill, they were chill for him. But I also like that he owns up to it. So anyway, then we go to the next scene, and Allie is having her moment. She goes off on this super long rant that's very clearly about her, you know, relationship that isn't working out. And then Dean ends up clapping and saying she's great. Then we have a sequence of everybody drinking, blah, blah, blah. And eventually, Justin and Garrett have to do a dance off for Kendall while she's sitting on a throne. And the way that Kendall is acting is delightful. Okay. Like, really, I love her. She's like, oh, this is going to be good. Cause she's like wearing her crown, and Garrett has to dance for her. And they literally, it's a stripper pole. And we don't get to see the full scenes because there ends up being stuff where Justin is talking to Hannah, and he's saying that I wanted to ask you out, but I didn't because I thought you were really serious with Garrett. And she's like, nope, we're free to see other people. And Justin is like, okay, then I would like to take you out sometime. And she's like, sure. And in the background, we see like Garrett giving Kendall a striptease. And it's honestly so cute. And I love that they like had their talk back there, probably had a couple drinks. And she kind of was just like, oh, dude, I'm sorry you're into this girl who's not into you. Like, it is a little bit of like poetic justice for her to have. So I just love how that vibe plays out. But Hannah's getting what she wanted, and now it maybe doesn't feel right. So we have the next scene now where Garrett and Hannah talk after that. And they both say, like, the deal is over. And she says, I got you the grade. And he says, I got you the guy. And we're all so cool about this, is what I wrote. So then we go to the next scene, and we have Logan shooting the puck, and Garrett shows up to talk to him. And Garrett says that like he has a plan. He doesn't have time for girls. He's going to stick to it. Hannah was a distraction. And Logan says like, you're Garrett Graham. Things are all going to work out. And Garrett's like, well, that was the plan. It's you and me on the Bruins. So we're just going to put this stuff aside. So then we have Logan's going to take off, and now Garrett is going to shoot some pucks by himself, brooding there. Then we have one last scene at Drunk Shakespeare where we have Allie up above on the walk, and she's thinking about something, and she pulls out her phone, and it says, do not call on there. Now, this could have been Sean, but I had a feeling it was someone else, even the first time, because I just don't think she would have actually listed Sean as do not call. I just think she wouldn't have done that. So I even at the time was like, what's going on with that? That is an interesting vibe that I was getting. But she says, I know I said I wouldn't call, as she's walking down the stairs. And then it switches over to Hannah and Justin, and Hannah's kind of against the wall, and Justin is like drinking a beer and talking to her, and she's really trying to take in everything that he's saying. And now like the fact that Garrett had told her the deal was done, and she should be so into Justin. He's talking about music with her. And I mean, it's just not the same. Like there isn't the same like spark and the same like rub up against each other. Like they collaborate together well, but they don't like spark things in each other well, you know? And so she ends up asking him a question about a song, and he starts breaking it down analytically like she did. And she's like, no, but what does it make you feel? And he says, jealous that I didn't write it. What does it make you feel? And she even says, she's like, I don't know what it makes me feel. But when he asks her to come back to his place, and she says, I don't think so. And he says, rain check. It's really kind of a sweet moment, because it's like they're both very emotionally intelligent about what's going on in this moment. And he's realizing that she is into Garrett, and she's realizing she is into Garrett. And so I fully believe right there when he's saying rain check, he realizes that their date's not going to happen. That's what I'm interpreting for the show wise, right? Because then we have our final scene of episode 4 with Garrett hitting pucks, and all of a sudden we hear Hannah's voice start singing, Now That I Found You. And he maybe thinks he's imagining it, and he's just spinning around. This is a scene you've probably seen people do clips from a whole bunch. And finally, he sees Hannah up in the box playing on a keyboard, and he gets up there, which, you know, we don't show the fact that the man must have been huffing and puffing his way up there. He had his skates on, for crying out loud. But he gets up there, and he's standing by the door, and she looks at him, and I think they do kiss, and it ends on their kiss, or they're about to kiss. I can't remember. I think it ends on the kiss. But either way, we know the kiss is coming, and when we get to episode 5 and 6, we'll get to see the conclusion to that. But that is where episode 4 ends. I just really enjoyed the build-up and how they played it off on here. And while I will say that episode 3 and 4, I think feels like, I know there was the orgasm scene, but besides that, to me, these 2 episodes did feel like very high school. And I don't know about that, because even when I was doing my like reread of this, because by the way, this is about what episodes 3 and 4 covered. They cover a lot of Garrett and Hannah's story to me. Whereas these next 4 episodes, obviously there's other storyline that's in there as well, but there isn't as much left to cover in those ones. This covered a lot of the meat of their story, and parts of this are in earlier episodes and then later episodes, but for the most part, there's a lot to them that doesn't get put in here. And I really didn't remember those things until I did my reread of this section of the book. And I feel like, yes, the show shares, like, sorry, I should officially say this. I'm going to get into the comparison parts now. I'm diving right into that. Sorry, I just rolled into it. Normally I would say that more officially. I'm going to do comparisons here. There was a lot of meat to their story right here that we left out. Granted, a lot of it was sexual stuff, but it was all very moving, the scenes that don't get put in there. And these are scenes that, in my opinion, they boiled it almost all down to one scene, and they saved all the rest of their sex scenes for them officially being together. And then they were all jammed into a montage that we will, of course, be talking about in the next comparison recap. But I think it is a fundamental shift in the characters, and it really gets cemented what type of story they're telling in these episodes 3 and 4. And this is probably the part where, like, I'm kind of the saddest about it, because I liked how the book showed how much intimacy she was sharing with Garrett, and just how, like, I don't feel like she's super deluded in the book. It's not like she doesn't pine as, like, that hard over Justin. But she spends so much time with Garrett in intimate situations. And I don't just mean when they're naked. I mean, they are bearing their souls to each other. And so when it gets to the point where she has an opportunity to go out with Justin, you are just like, abso-fucking-lutely not. And in the show, yes, it's obviously clear that she should be with Garrett at that point. They haven't shared all of the deepest things that they have at this point. You know, like, Garrett is honestly offended in the book that she would even think about still going out with Justin, even though they haven't had this conversation or communicated anything. To him, it's just so blatantly clear that they should be together. He just needs to pause, rewind, and talk about it. He shouldn't just assume anything. But the Garrett of the show is a lot more internalized. He's a lot more held back. And I can understand why show Hannah would be a bit more confused, you know. It's also, you know, condensed into, I think, a shorter amount of time in the show as well. So there's that aspect going on too. So let's go through the biggest changes that I saw, like I said, because I wrote better notes this time, I think, than the first time. So a few of the big things to go with here. In the book, there is more exclusive asking out by Justin before the orgasm talk. So to pull this into focus here, Justin has already noticed her with Garrett sooner, more, and he actually legit asked her out. It isn't just, you know, because they're not writing a song together in the book, and Justin himself is a football player, and when he sees her at a party, he's like, I think you're with Garrett, and she's like, yeah, we're casually seeing each other, and he's like, I would like to go out with you. And he even says, if it goes well, I'd like you to stop seeing Garrett. Like, the man is bold. He straight up says that. He's not looking to just be super casual with her, which I think is very interesting. And so she then has those feelings about like, okay, I need to get this thing worked out so that I can be with Justin, right? Like, that's something that's like important to her to do. Okay, they're at a coffee shop and Justin actually comes up and asks her out. And he has a couple of games coming up. So he says it's going to be 2 weeks before they can go out. And she says, I'm allowed to do whatever I want. Garrett and I aren't together. We just hang out sometimes. And she says, God, that sounded sleazy. And so Justin says, look, Hannah, I think you're cool. I'd like to know you better. Totally. And I'm fine if you're dating other people at the same time. But if you and I go out a couple of times and we have a connection, I'm going to want to invoke the exclusivity clause pretty quick. So that's what Justin says. So that happens at a coffee shop. That's right. Then there is, I think, another party or where they're out somewhere. I didn't write down perfectly all these details, but she ends up running into Devin, who is her ex. This is a huge change. So she's been asked out by Justin. She's excited about that. Then she runs into Devin. And Devin is the boyfriend she had that she was seeing for a while, and she wasn't able to come with him. This guy was actually in a band, which I thought was interesting. I forgot about that. And she wasn't able to come with Devin, and he eventually dumped her. And so then this is at the same party where I believe that she is starting to drink. So whatever party it is in here, I think they're just at, I don't know if this was the karaoke night. It might be. Yes, it is. So she started drinking. When Garrett is, I think, in the bathroom, she runs into Devin, and so then she keeps drinking. So that's the order of events in here. She's been asked out by Justin, but it's going to be 2 weeks before she goes out. Then Garrett convinces her to have a couple drinks. He'll watch her drinks for her, and they're out, and he's like, I'm not going to drink anything. You have a great time. So we were doing that stuff. Then while he is away from her for a couple minutes, she runs into Devin, her ex, which brings up the reminder to her that she isn't able to come with a guy. And she's like, if I'm going to be serious with Justin, I want to be able to move on from this part with me. So then the same type of thing plays out, though, where the party moved to Garrett's house. He's still trying to get her home at the end of everything, but she ends up falling asleep in his bed instead. And then when she had tried to make a move on him when he came into bed, because he actually goes and drinks after he's put her to bed, because he is having a bit of a moment of thinking about Hannah sleeping in his clothes in his bed. And he's like, she's super drunk. Nothing's going to be happening there. And he goes and gets drunk. But when he comes back, Hannah makes a move on him. And Garrett is like, yo, what's going on right now? And she ends up going to sleep after trying to make a move on him. And he takes a long time to fall asleep, is what it says. So then we have the next morning, which is that episode, the beginning of season 4, where she remembers everything that happened and she wants to do something with Garrett. And the night before, when she was drunk, she wanted to do something with Garrett. But now they're both sober. So this is when she has the conversation with him. Now, the way that this is a change, though, why I wanted to bring it up, because it is happening the same way. She goes into the full truth here. Okay, this isn't saved for when they're angry later on and a fight is happening. She explains the whole thing to him. She says, it wasn't a friend who got drugged in high school. It was me. When I was 15, I was raped. And she's like, please don't feel sorry for me. I moved on from it, but I think that I'm broken. I can't get my body to respond when I'm with a guy. I like go out of my body. And she starts crying, and Garrett is like, please don't cry. It breaks my heart. And she says, I'm broken. And he says, you're not broken, baby. I promise. And she says, then help me prove it. And he says, okay, I will. So that's the start of her explaining what's happened to him. Now, another change as I'm going through this list. So it isn't Dean that he gets advice from. It's actually Birdie, who is a senior, and he asked him if he's ever been with a virgin. So that's how the virgin talk comes up, is he figures, and he doesn't want to say, he doesn't want it to even be able to be implied that Hannah has been raped. So he says, have you ever been with a virgin? And Birdie gives him some advice, which a lot of it is the same thing about it. Is like, don't make it a big deal, make her feel comfortable, and do lots of foreplay, all those things, and just really listen to her. And also don't put too much stress on it. It's supposed to be fun. And he's like, make her comfortable, go slow, lots of foreplay, don't stress. And Garrett, that is what his plan is to be. So then things kind of go the same way for that first scene where they're together, where they're trying to have sex, but it's so much funnier. Like, this is the thing. It's so funny because like she's really getting into it with him, but then she like feels his dick and is like, how is that man monster supposed to fit in me? So yes, it has some of those cheesy scenes, but they're also hilarious. And I think it just builds their rapport so much because, again, Hannah and Garrett are truly friends at this point. They are. Garrett has said in multiple chapters that like she is a friend he wants to fuck for sure, but he also is just like, he really cares about her. So their sex, even though this is like awkward, it's hilarious. Like, it's so funny. But then the same thing happens where she keeps slipping out of it, and he's like, it's okay, let's do this. And so they do the mutual masturbation game. They do that. But I just keep writing, like, there's so much more like intimacy with it too. And we get these things from like in his head where he's just so obsessed with her, and they're trying to do this mutual masturbation, and he's like, she's just so beautiful that I'm gonna lose it any second. And it's just so hot. We love that stuff. That is hard to show on screen though, so I understand. And it's a super hot scene. Now, the other things that are different here is that they where else does this go? So yes, then there is a scene where they practice some more. So they don't just do one practice thing, right? Like, they do practice as in the mutual masturbation. Then the next time they're together, Garrett goes down on her, and she actually cries afterwards because it felt so good, and she's so happy, and she doesn't feel boring anymore. And Garrett, to make the scene lighter, says, okay, you've got to say it. And she's like, what do I have to say? And she says, say, Garrett Graham, you are a sex god. You have achieved what no other man ever has. Which is adorable. And actually, when Belmont got cast and he shared his casting announcement, there is literally, that is the clip that he shared on the post. That is, say, Garrett Graham, you are a sex god. So I love that that's the one he shared. So anyway, and then after that, they watch Breaking Bad, and she spends the night, or does he take her home in this one? I think, oh yeah, no, and then she gives him a BJ. So they have oral sex that night. Which I think is an important change to share. I really do think that it is. And she says here, which I think is important, because she says, Devin and I tried to make it happen for 8 months. Okay, so they were having sex. She wasn't coming for 8 months. Garrett did it after 2 hookups. Does this mean I'm fixed? And I just think it's so interesting because the answer is literally kind of like in the game. Like, he made her trust him. And, you know, that doesn't mean this Devin was a bad guy. You know, maybe it was too soon after what happened to her. She wasn't ready yet. And also, I think Garrett just kind of came out of nowhere for her. But then we have another scene that's changed. He gets her to stay while he has practice, and she makes lasagna for the guys, which I know people wanted to see that one. But he is already starting to have these thoughts that he wants her to be his girlfriend, but he doesn't know what to say about it. Now, this next part, I think, is crucial that was left out as well. So they've now done, like, they fooled around those couple of times. And next up is Halloween. Okay, so we're showing the progression of time a little bit too. And we learn that Garrett Graham hates Halloween, and he won't say why. Hannah's supposed to, like, work an event for Halloween, but he is like, I won't be doing anything for Halloween. Partway into the night, she misses him. And so she ends up texting him if he's home, and he says, yeah. And she says, I'm bailing on the dorm crawl. Can I come by? And so Hannah ends up coming over. And so they don't immediately jump into sex here. They're, like, watching, like, Breaking Bad together. And they share some very important parts of who they are at this point. Now, I don't want to say, like, everything, because we do share some of this in episode 5. However, my point of putting it here is that this stuff gets shared before they're ever officially a couple, right? She shares more about what the fallout from her rape was. And again, it's not shared in the heat of a moment or because Garrett did something she didn't like and she's shoving something in his face or giving him a reason. She explains why she doesn't go home to see her family for the holidays. And she shares that what everything went wrong for her family after the rape. She shares that she tried to take Aaron to court. She does say the first name of who attacked her. She says his name is Aaron, and that nobody, like, they weren't able to get a conviction. And so he got out on bail. She had to see him at school. His mother was the mayor. Her father ended up getting in a fight with someone who called her a whore, and, like, her family was literally imploding. And then after, they didn't end up taking the guy to court because, like, they did, like, I know what it's called, but I can't remember, but they did, like, a seeing if they could take the case to court. And when they didn't, the rapist's family actually sued her family. And so her parents are in a lot of debt. And so she's like, so I don't go home to visit them because it's just too many bad memories. And we just find out a lot more details about it. They weren't able to prove anything because they did a rape kit, but because she was a virgin, they were able to twist it into the fact that she just hadn't liked it and that the trauma done to her was what would happen to any virgin. And so it was crazy, and they got people to say that she willingly took drugs and then she was regretting it. And so her whole life blew up because of this. And she also admits that he isn't in jail. So she shares all of that with Garrett. And then Garrett shares why he hates Halloween. And I don't want to go into all those details yet because, again, literally in the next episode we'll talk about it. But he shares all of this with her before. They then have, she gives him a blowjob. And it's hot. We love it. It's great. But it leads to them having very intimate sex for the first time. Fully, all the way. And it's really beautiful between the two of them. And at the end, he invites her to his game. It isn't to have her prove that she's seen with him or any of that. He asks her to his game when they play Harvard. because he wants her there. So then, to finish off where will stop with the book comparisons, because I think it will meet us where we've ended with episode 4. She goes to the game with him, and he totally wins it. Garrett has to talk with his dad for the first time and tells him he needs to come home to Thanksgiving. Again, we'll talk about that more in the next one. But he gets in a real funk about his dad. And then at the end of that, Garrett ends up hearing from one of his buddies that she was going to go out with Justin because someone had overheard that conversation, which at this point, I think it was like a week ago or something. And she still doesn't have anything planned with Justin. They just agreed to go out in 2 weeks' time. And so Garrett overhears this and he rushes to find Hannah. He literally goes to her dorm room, barges his way in there, and is like, "Are you going out with Justin this weekend?" And she is almost confused for a moment because she doesn't really have plans still to go out with him. But it was overheard that they were going out. And here Garrett is already making all these plans to be with her, which he hasn't informed her of, though, right? She thinks he doesn't want to be serious about anyone anyway. That's what everyone keeps telling her about him. And Garrett is like flabbergasted about it. And he's like, "You're not going with her." And of course you're not going out with him. And of course that makes her defensive because she's like, "You don't want a girlfriend." And he's like, "I don't have time for girlfriends, but guess what? Priorities change. So you're saying you want me to be your girlfriend?" "Yeah, maybe that's what I'm saying." And she's like, "Why?" And he's like, "Why would you want that? You're all one track about hockey, remember? And besides, we argue too much." This is adorable. He says, "We don't argue, we bicker. It's the same thing." No, it's not. Bickering is fun, good-natured. Arguing is, and I think this is important that gets cut off because yes, Garrett Graham knows the difference between a couple who's bickering and a couple who's arguing. Okay? There is a difference. And he says, "I know you're into me, Wellesley, and I'm into you. Would it really be so bad if we made things official?" And Hannah, now in this moment, is spiraling through all the things he just dumped on her, and she doesn't answer him fast enough. So he feels very offended now. And he says this line that he's like, "I'm just your sex therapist, right? Actually, no, I'm your fucking fluffer." And she's like, "Fluffer?" And he's like in porn. "They bring in a fluffer to suck off the dudes between takes so they stay hard. That's my job, right? To get you nice and hot for Cole, to get you ready to bone with him." And she, of course, is upset and is like, "That's disgusting. And 2, that's not fair." And he's like, you probably weren't going to go out with him. Thanks for that. You got what you wanted from me. I guess Justin can take it from here." So he runs out of there, right? He runs out of there and he's being kind of a jerk. But again, he's dumping all of this on her like she had any time to process it. Didn't realize he was willing to be serious with her, and he just dumps it all on her. But what does Al Kennedy do? What does Al Kennedy do? I love this. Because literally 3 paragraphs later, we switch to Garrett's point of view, and he's running out of there, and all of a sudden he's spiraling, and he's like, "We were just fooling around." Just what Hannah said. But he doesn't even have time to go down that track because Hannah followed him. She didn't let him get away. And she marches right up to him. He's trying to get away from her. She's literally wearing her PJs with music note pajamas, which is adorable. And she is like, "Dude, you didn't give me any time to talk." And he's like, "Well, we said all the things we need to say." And she's like, "No, we didn't. You dumped all this on me. I didn't know we were emotionally at this place or that you wanted a girlfriend. And like, I might be into that." Which I just love. And he then admits that he's like, well, first she says, "I'm sorry I didn't tell you about the date, but I'm not going to apologize for needing more than 5 seconds to think about the possibility of you and me together." And he's like, "I'm sorry I ran off, but I'm not sorry that I want to be with you." And so they agree, let's make it official. And he says, "What about Justin?" And she says, "What about him?" She says, "I canceled the date before I walked out to talk to you." Love it. Which that is a carryover from the show as well. She cancels that date with Justin before she goes to play for him in the arena, which is cool, or at the ice. And then she says, so you're not hot for him anymore? And she says, I'm hot for you, Garrett, only you. Now can we please go inside? I'm freezing my butt off and I need my fluffer to warm me up. And he says, excuse me? And she says, oh, sorry, did I say fluffer? I meant boyfriend. And his last line here is, that's the sweetest words I've ever heard in my life. So that is where I'll stop with the comparisons there. I know I just went down deep into that and everything. But I like how it plays out in the book for two main reasons differently. Okay. So I like that they share more intimacy physically and more intimacy emotionally before we get to this point. Because yes, the show shows parts of that later on, and I think they did a good job of showing a few things early on. I just think that it is the super cliche that they did only have like voyeur, like they did only have mutual masturbation, and that was it. And I just wish they had had some more going on. And this is going to become a pattern in this show, okay? Like this isn't, again, I'm sorry to make the comparison here, I'm sorry, but this isn't heated rivalry. They're not quite using the sex scenes in the same way. You know, we're going to see not lots, but like they do sex in montages, right? And I get that for some reason, but to me, it's that age-old mistake when you're filming a romance to skip the sex scenes. Really, the only ones they will show here are that mutual masturbation, which is super awkward, and we run through it too quickly. We don't sit in the emotions of it at all. And then, you know, we'll talk about what some of the other sex scenes look like when we get there, because they're in, particularly 5 and 6 have a lot of sex happening in them. But they aren't just throwaway scenes. They aren't just, oh yes, they're not young teens, they're young adults fucking constantly. Like that's not what is happening. Like Garrett and Hannah are building trust. And so when the idea of her going out with Justin comes up now in the book, it's just preposterous to him because Garrett has moved so far past that. And sure, he hasn't told her yet, but he just has thought that with all that they're sharing, he has never shared as deeply about his mom with anyone. She's never shared about her rape like that with anyone. He thinks it's just duh that they're past that. Now, that's not a good enough reason to just assume that she should have known that, but it makes a lot of sense in the book because it's like, yeah, he just shared some super serious things with her. How about he tells her he wants her to be his girlfriend, right? And I mean, there's so much good banter and emotions that happen during their sex scenes. And to me, again, I bring this back. It shows to me that heated rivalry hadn't been out yet and wasn't in the zeitgeist yet, because we've seen how sexy the consent is in that show during, like before and during the sex scenes. And yeah, we of course get that in the mutual masturbation scene. And again, there'll be some other sex scenes we're going to talk about later. But building that intimacy with Hannah is so important because this is someone who literally thought she was broken, and it needs to start to set in that it isn't just because Garrett is a sex god among men. It's because he's her friend. It's because he cares about her. It's because he takes the time to make her comfortable, and all of those beautiful things. And so when she's now literally offered the man that she thinks she wants, it's like, no, I'm wrong about what I think I want, because this is what I want. And if I was just with some other random guy who's sexy, even if he likes music, even if he likes what it is, he hasn't been vulnerable with me the way Garrett has, right? And to me, that's what the show is conveying when Garrett, you know, tells her what the song makes him feel, when he listens to her and helps her orgasm that one time. Like, it is conveying that, but it's also not, because the show Garrett is very stoic in a lot of ways, like stoic about his emotions, right? Whereas Garrett in the book, he spends a lot more time with her, and we get so many scenes of them. Well, and even earlier too, like in the first few episodes, they only study together 1.5 times before the test, right? And in the show or in the book, like they just really can't stay away from each other. Like they find reasons to just hang out. So that is, I think, up through these 4 episodes, what I'm kind of missing is, again, I understand that shows aren't too comfortable yet with using sex as a language in a romance yet. They make it, the montage stuff, they make it show some asses slapping and they're, show some tits and that's it. And it's like, that's not what made Heated Rivalry emotional. And again, I know they're different shows. I know. And I'm not comparing it to compare them perfectly together and to hold one to the standard of the other. I'm comparing it as in, this is a romance that you're telling, and a huge part of this type of romance is the sex, right? And having people be naked and in sexual positions isn't the same, right? That is what, I don't know another way to say this, that is what outsiders think of romance, right? That is what they think it is. And that doesn't mean I don't want to look at Graham, and I don't want to see him between her legs, and I don't want to see, his ab. Like, of course I want to see those things, right? I'm not blind. That's part of what I'm here. However, you can do love scenes where they don't even take off all their clothes, and they still have those conversations in bed afterwards that maybe they had in the heat of the moment in the book. They could be cuddling afterwards and talk about it, or watching Breaking Bad, which, by the way, one of the other Easter eggs I wanted to point out to you, because I know we maybe were sad they weren't watching Breaking Bad on this. I think it was really cute, the romances that they've been watching. Like, she watched Dirty Dancing. We're going to see that come up again in another episode. But I was told, and I looked it up myself, in episode 2, when they're looking at playlists together, one of the tabs actually has Breaking Bad open in the background. So maybe they did fall asleep watching Breaking Bad after they looked at some music. Who's to say? Maybe they couldn't get the rights to showing Breaking Bad as well, but they could have talked about it. I don't know. Whatever. Who knows? So that did show up there. But anyway, those are my big contrasting comparisons that I would make. That is what I'm missing thus far. But again, we're now up to this far into the book. They are together. But we have a lot of other story that's going to get told in the next 4 episodes too. So I'm looking forward to breaking that down. So, yep, this video is almost 2 hours. Please, if you liked it, make sure you like it. Leave some hockey sticks down below if you're watching on your phone. Hype this video. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. I will be fitting these videos in around some of my other content, maybe in replace of some of my content. It just depends. Like I said, these take a lot of work. It took me like 6 hours to rewatch the episodes, read those parts of the book, take all the notes I want. Filming this took almost 2 hours. Editing it will take that much time as well. So please show your love for this. But I will finish out the whole series, I promise. It just takes a lot of work, so it's spread out a little bit here for you guys. But thank you so much for watching. And yeah, I hope you're enjoying the show. Again, down below, share your thoughts on what you're thinking through the end of episode 4, or up until the point in the book where they get together. Let me know what you think. We'll talk about the other parts as we go. So I'll see you guys next time. Bye.